In this video, I'm going to set up and solve the first few pages with you for Module 3, Topic 3, Lesson 1. This one I'm going to focus on pages 125 through 129, and then my next video will have the answers to these pages and intro pages 130 to 136, and then obviously the next video will have the answers to that. So let's focus on this. Put it on the plane. Represent an equation with tables and graphs. Angela charges $35 an hour for tutoring services plus a $5 travel fee if she goes to the student's house. Name the quantities that are changing in this situation. Well, the quantities that are changing are the number of hours that she tutors for, that was supposed to be T-U-T, tutors. And then obviously the more hours she tutors, the more money she makes. So what else also changes is the amount she charges. She charges more if she has to work more hours. Name the quantities that remain constant. What quantity doesn't change? How much does she charge per hour? She charges $35 per hour. That remains constant. And what else remains constant? How much does she charge if she has to travel? The $5 travel fee. So an equation for this. And, well, let's take a look at the quantities that are changing. The number of hours that she works, I'm going to let that be X. And the amount that she charges is Y, because how much she charges depends on how many hours she works. So the dependent variable is the X, the independent variable is the X, the dependent variable is the Y. Y depends on X. So the equation, Y her total charge, X hours worked. Y equals, how much does she charge per hour? $35 per hour. Oh, and then plus her $5 travel fee. That's her rate, her slope, or her rate of change. Every hour, when this goes up by 1, this goes up by 35. And then a problem, if she makes $75, how many hours did she work? Well, they gave us the total. And again, remember, the total is $35 per hour plus 5. Well, in this case, they're giving us this value. They're saying she made $75, and she makes $35 per hour plus 5. We want to find out how many hours she worked, the X. So let's subtract 5 from both sides. And I get 70 equals 35 times X. I did subtraction property of equality. Next, I need to get X alone. It's being multiplied by a 35, so I'm going to divide both sides by 35. The division property of equality. 35 divided by 35 is 1. So for 1 hour, or for number of hours, let's find out how many she had to work. 70 divided by 35 is 2. So the number of hours that she had to work to make that would be 2. So she worked 2 hours. Let's take a look at the next page. Mrs. Jackson translates books from one language into another for a living. She charges $325 to manage the product. So that means she's charging $325 as soon as she takes the job. And then she charges $25 per complete page of translated material. So if you hire her and she's only going to translate one page for you, you have to pay the $325 plus the $25 for her to translate one page. So if she only translates one page for you, she's going to charge you $350. If she translates 10 pages for you, well, you still have to pay the $325, but 10 times 25 is $250. So the more pages you have her do for you, the more pages that she translates, the less overall you're paying for those pages for the total job. Let's find out the quantities that change. Well, the number of pages she translates, number of pages translated, and the other thing that changes is the total bill. The total amount she charges. What quantities remain constant? Well, she charges $325 for taking on the project. And then her rate that she charges, her rate is the $25 per hour. That should just be per hour, not per hours. That remains constant. And so those are the two that we're working with here. Which quantity depends on the other? Does it make more sense to say the more she charges, the more pages she translated, or the more pages she translates, the more money she charges? Both work somewhat, but I'm hoping you agree that it makes sense to say the amount she charges depends on the number of pages she translates. So, which quantity depends on the other? The amount she charges. I guess I should say the total amount she charges. The total amount she charges depends on the number of pages translated. So let's take a look then at page 127. You can represent the problem situation in many ways. You use verbal descriptions to represent the relationship between the number of pages Mrs. Jackson translates and her total fees. Let's consider how to represent the relationship with tables and graphs. Complete the table that shows the various projects that Ms. Jackson has managed recently. And so, if she translates one page, how much does she charge? And again, her bill is $325 plus $35 per number of pages times So if she only worked, she charges $25 per page, not $35. If she only only translated one page, this would be $325 plus $25. She would charge you $350. If she translates two pages, that's $375 because it's the $325 plus 2 times 25 plus 50 more. Well, I'm looking at the pattern. As this goes up plus 25, this goes up plus 1. 3 pages was $400. 4 pages, 425. If this is 10, 10 times 25 is 250. And then add to that 325. So that's 575. And we can do the math and figure out all of these. If she charged $1,150, she charges $25 per page plus $325. We can use this equation to solve, and we would find out that she translated 33 pages for that amount. For $2,100, 2,100 equals 25x plus 325. We would find out that she translated 71 pages. And 92 pages, 25 times 92 plus 325. That would be 2,625. What's the least number of pages that she could translate? What's the greatest number of pages that she's translated recently? Well, she only charges if she translates a whole page. So I guess she could translate 0 pages. Just if she did a half a page, she wouldn't charge for it. So I would say 0 pages. And if she translated half a page, she was going to just charge you the $325. And what's the greatest number of pages she's translated recently? 92. What are the least and greatest amounts of money that Mrs. Jackson has earned? The least would be $350, or excuse me, $325. Well, the least she actually has earned is $350. So, because it's asking how much has she earned. She's earned $350 was the lowest. And $2,625 was the most. Consider the ranges of values in the table to choose the lower and upper bounds for x and y axis, then write the upper bounds in the table shown for each quantity. This is a fancy way to say you need to, when you're putting your graph together, you want to make sure you go slightly below the lowest value, at it or below, and at or above the upper bounds. And so when I'm looking at number of pages, the lowest bound, if she translated 0, I would say 0 pages translated. And then the upper bound, she did 92. We could just take it at 92, but I would like to go with a nice number. And so I'm going to say 100. And then in terms of money made, earnings, I guess earnings, this one is a little tricky. The earnings, I'm going to put $0 if somebody didn't even hire her. And then we need to go above $26.25. So I'm going to go all the way up to $3,000. And if I put these on a number line and space my intervals by 10, I'd go 10, 20, 30, 40. I would do intervals of 10. If I do this with 10, what's 3,000 divided by 10? These intervals are 300. And so in calculating, like filling out the bounds, I want to make sure I can display this data, and I like my intervals to be pretty friendly numbers. So pages translated, on this one we said we went by tens. So this was 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100 pages translated. and we took the y up by 300. So that was 300, 600, 900, 1200, 1500, 1800, 2100, 2400, 2700, and 3000. And then they're asking us to create a graph with this data. And I'm looking, if she was hired on to do the job, if she translated less than a full page, I'm going to put my line right there. If she were to do 100 pages, how much would she make with 100 pages? So that would be 25 times 100 plus 325. So 2,500 plus 325, that is 2825. So on my chart, 2825, 2760, 20. That's somewhere around here. When x is 100, y is 2825. And this is linear, so I'm going to just do a straight line between those 2 points. She's charging by the page, not by the portion of a page or the word. So it's going to be a discrete graph because she's just charging by the translated page. She's not charging for 1,000th of a page, 1,000,000th of a page. Describe the relationship between the two quantities. The relationship on the graph is her total fee is dependent on the pages translated. Her total fee is dependent on the number of pages translated. Write a linear equation to represent this and define our variables. So y is my dependent. So y is money made, or the total money. And my x is pages translated. So I'm going to write it in the form y equals our slope, how it changes by, times x plus b. When x is 0, what is y? Because this is the y-intercept. That was 325. And how much does she charge per page? $25 per page. And when I add those two together, $25 times the number of pages plus $325, I have her total. So y, the total, is $25 per page plus $325 for taking the job. And then number 10, refer to your equation and graph to answer the following questions. Where is 325 represented in the graph of this equation? The 325 is a constant, and on the graph it's when number of pages is 0. When x is 0, y is 325. And where is $25 per page represented on the graph? Again, that's a constant. 25 is a constant, $25. And that rate of change, every time when x increases by 1, the y goes up 25. So up 25, forward 1. Up 25, forward 1. So it represents the change in y when x increases by 1. So 25 is a constant. It represents the change in y when x increases by 1. 25 is the slope. I'm going to let you see if you can answer the questions on page 129, and I will post the answers for those in the next video, and do a brief introduction into going into some of the next problems. If you feel confident with them, just work forward, and if not, just wait for me in my video, and I'll try to give a good example. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help. Good luck.